Hello Year 10, it's me, Mrs. Kahoot. Welcome to week 3. Week 3? Yes, week 3. So, you should have looked at components of fitness with me in week 1, and then we have looked at a bit of movement analysis week 2, looking at muscles, joints, bones, movements that occur around them, muscles that allow that to happen, a whistle-stop tour through lever systems, and a whistle-stop tour through planes of movement and axis of rotation. Feel free to go back and watch any of those videos again. Like I say each week, we're not learning anything new because wouldn't have missed out on that chunk of time. Anyway, we would have started after Easter coursework, which is consolidating this knowledge on these topics that you've learned in Year 10, putting them into one document, which again is going to be a really useful assessment tool for me because obviously we don't know how things are going to work out towards the end of next year. So I still think it's a really important document, and we are consolidating current knowledge as well as trying to get a draft copy of something that we can work with when we come back. So essentially killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You are welcome. So today we are just going to look at this bottom part of what would be going into section 4 of your coursework. Hopefully most of you are at that point. If you have done that, you can just go through and double check that what you've written coincides with what I'm going to talk about. And yeah, without further ado, let's have a look then at skills. Breaking skills down. So it's referred to as sports psychology within your specification, which personally I don't think is the right term for it, 'cause it's not real true sports psychology. However, talked a lot about skills, how we break skills down, looking at the movements of skills and how that skill occurs. Now we're going to look at what different types of skills are out there. So it's just another way of classifying skills. So we've broken the skill down into the analysis of its movement, and now we're going to look at how we classify that skill. So we classify them, like you might think, oh, what's the point of doing that? Well, they're classified in order to be able to recognise the best way to train, basically. So if you need to improve a certain skill, one way of looking at it might be look at how we can classify it, and then that will help us adapt training and suit training to maximise progress within that skill. So that's basically why they're categorised. Now, you've had a question on some exams that you've done for me, some mock exams in Year 10, about a motor skill. What is a motor skill? We all have a laugh and a joke about the Year 11 a few years ago that put that a motor skill was driving an F1 car in an exam. So no, a motor skill is just a skill that involves movement and can be practiced in order to reach a certain goal or an outcome with it. Now, skills can be gross. So one way to classify skills is to classify them basically into big skills and small skills. So big skills we would classify as gross skills, so skills that use large muscle groups, or fine movements, so gross or fine skills, which you would use small, tiny movements. So running, for example, is an example of a gross motor skill, whereas putting in golf would probably be an example of a fine motor skill. So skills differ in ability. In that skills, you're not born with these motor skills that we're talking about. They're learned. You weren't born being able to walk. You learn how to walk, and they're developed through a period of practice. And obviously, when we're talking about sport, we're talking about very highly refined skills that have been practiced over and over and over and over and over again to be enhanced. Now, the way we characterise skills, so every skill has one or more of these 4 characteristics. So a characteristic is just a way of describing someone. Like a characteristic of me is that I've got brown hair, for example. So a characteristic of a skill or a skilled performance, one is that it could be goal directed and predetermined. So a player will practice a skill with a certain goal in mind. So for example, if you are shooting in basketball, the goal is to get it in every time, to get the ball in the basket every time. So that's the goal direction, that's the predetermined outcome to know whether that skill has been performed well or not. Aesthetics then is about looking good. So, if something is aesthetically pleasing to you, it means that it's nice to watch. It means that it's good to watch. So you know that a dance or a gymnastic routine has been done well because it's aesthetically pleasing. It gives you that feeling, has a good aesthetic, a good look about it. coordination then. So really important, it's a component of fitness. So a skilled performer needs to be controlled essentially. This is about control, timing, the rate that something is done. The performer is determining how the skill takes place. It's not just fluke, for example. You know, sometimes people can perform a skill really well, but it was just a fluke. It wasn't very coordinated. Efficiency and fluency. So a skill needs to be able to be performed over and over again to the same high level. You know, that's how we determined what a really skilled performance is. Something where nobody's wasted any energy and it just seems to flow and it all fits together and it's executed perfectly, for example. So this is just, like I said, ways to describe all types of motor skill when we're looking specifically at sport and physical activity. Now let's just look at what categories we could put them in. And now we categorise or classify these skills by putting on something called a continuum. So you see along here on the bottom of this PowerPoint slide that this is the continuum. Now it's a sliding scale. It means that skills don't necessarily fit at one end or the other end. Okay, they might feature somewhere along this. So it's important to remember that something may not just be classified. What is key is if in an exam you are placing something on a continuum, you roughly place it somewhere on the right side of that continuum, and you can explain why you've placed it closer to the end or closer to the middle. So let's look at simple and complex then. So this would be the difficulty continuum. So two types of continuum, difficulty and environmental. When we're talking about difficulty, it essentially is what it says on the tin. How difficult is that skill to perform? How much information processing does it require from you as the performer? So a complex skill is going to involve a high level of decision making, a lot of cognitive thinking, a lot of elements to consider to be able to perform it well. So a lot of game sports you will find, and skills within game sports, hockey, football, rugby, netball, basketball, will feature towards the complex end of a continuum, because you've got crowds, other teammates, your teammates, the score, how far along in the game you are. There's lots of things to consider. Simple skills then are things that have limited amount of information to process. The skill has a smaller cognitive element. So for example, running 800 meters. Okay, it's essentially quite a simple skill, a gross skill, but it's a simple skill because there's not as much to process other than, the gun goes, you start, you pace your race appropriately. You might have to consider where other players are if you want, other runners are if you want to overtake them, things like that, but it is more of a simple skill. So moving on then, environmental continuum. When we're talking about the environmental continuum, we're talking about skills that are either open or closed. And when we say environment, now some of you get your heads a little bit confused with this. When I say environment, I don't mean just the weather. I don't mean if the sun is shining or not when you're performing that skill. We're talking about everything going on in the environment that you are performing that skill in. So an open skill is one that is massively affected by the sporting environment. So the performer has to take in a lot of their surroundings and respond to those surroundings accordingly in order to perform the skill well. So again, you will find that game sports feature closer to the open end of this continuum because, again, you have crowd, other players, your teammates, the score, the time, what position you are in the league, for example. There are lots. What type of game is it? Is it a final, a semi-final? There's lots to consider that could affect that environment, that sporting environment that you are in makes your skill a lot more open. There is less things that you can control. There are lots of more decisions that you need to make to perform it well. Closed skill then involves less decision making and the environment is predictable, so it's kept very similar each time. The performer can take their time to execute the skill. So, for example, performing a shot in golf. Now, if you know the course very well, courses don't change. They're set out a certain way and they don't change. And you have, time to take your shot. The crowd is silent. The only thing probably that's going to affect it and things you need to take into account are things like the wind. And obviously, the position of your ball at the time that you're taking the shot. But there's a lot less to consider. I'm not saying that there aren't things to consider, but the environment is definitely much more predictable. So again, skills can feature anywhere along here. Now what you need to do is think about those skills that you've previously been talking about, and after you've done the analysis of that skill, can you say whether that skill is open or closed? And now it's no good just writing in a piece of coursework, oh, I think a pass in football is an open skill. I need you to tell me why. I need you to tell me all the factors. And if that means that there is some repetition in what you are writing, then that is fine. You're going to have, some skills might have the same, similar explanations as to why they're open or closed or simple and complex. That is okay, but it is important that you do it that way. It's important that you give that explanation, because it just demonstrates to me that you have a wider understanding. And you might think, oh, it just sounds like common sense, Mrs. Kahoot. You need to imagine that, as you're writing this draft piece of coursework, which obviously is the task in your fact book to complete, as you're writing this coursework, you are writing it for somebody that knows absolutely nothing about GCSE PE and absolutely nothing about your sport. It should be a bit like a manual for them, a bit like a how to get better at this sport, how to break this sport down into all the itty bitty little bits with a bit of information about you in there as well. Now in terms of facts then you need to learn for this week. So my advice to you is, before you go on to do your coursework, is you look at the facts that you need to learn in your fact book. Now, I know obviously doing it this way, I've given you additional work to do, but I don't really think like that's too hard of a task, because obviously these are only 15-minute lessons, and I would ideally like you to match up your timetable that you would have at school. So that's 2 theory lessons a week that you would be doing, so 2 hours on this a week. Now, your definitions of your facts to learn are quite simple. So definition of an open skill, definition of a closed skill, definition of simple skill, definition of complex skill. So as long as you know them, as long as you could tell me them, you could move on to the coursework task. So finish completing section 4. If you haven't completed it, go back over and check. Again, like I said, I'm available on Teams for you to contact me on my day, and I'll get back to you like pretty much there and then. And then drop me an email anytime. Doesn't matter if it's a Saturday or Sunday, that is fine. I go on every day and check, so I aim to get back to you within 24 hours. In the meantime, stay sane, stay happy. Just one for the girls, if you haven't seen already, I'm launching a This Girl Can project. Well, it's going to last for a while, hopefully, but the idea is that we have some This Girl Can ambassadors within school, so girls that are passionate about sport and physical activity and opportunities for girls and women, and we put on events. So you'll be working with me, and we'll put on an event once a month or bi-monthly. If you're interested, have a look at the video that I've done, have a look at the newsletter that came out just after half term, explains how you can apply. You essentially just need to drop me an A4 application form via email. So hopefully hear from a few of you. In the meantime, stay happy, stay healthy, and I can't wait to see you all. Been really nice talking to you. I will see you next week. We are going to look at SMART targets and goal setting. Whoop-de-dee-whoop. Bye.